Boa tarde a todos e todas. Meu nome é Davi Medeiros, eu sou advisor aqui da rede EducationUSA na Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie. A rede EducationUSA é uma rede de escritórios que tem escritórios no mundo inteiro, são mais de 400 no mundo, aqui no Brasil são 43. Em São Paulo, além do nosso escritório na Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie, temos também escritórios na FAAP e no Colégio Etapa. Bem, é para nós uma grande alegria poder sempre trazer as universidades americanas em webinars que a gente organiza e tenham em mente que logo nós vamos ter também a feira virtual no dia 24 de agosto e a nossa feira, que é o Roadshow, em setembro, com muitas universidades vindo para cá se apresentar diretamente para vocês, além das feiras que acontecem nas escolas. Bem, para nós hoje, né, especificamente, a gente está falando sobre um tópico que nem sempre é abordado pelas universidades, vocês têm a chance de ouvir das universidades diretamente, que é sobre entrevistas. Então, hoje, para falar como funcionam as entrevistas de admissão nas universidades dos Estados Unidos, a gente está aqui com o Joe Spero, que é Associate Director da Bentley University, para trazer um bom panorama a respeito de como são as entrevistas, os do's and don'ts. E so, Joe, thank you very much for being here with us. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, David, and the rest of the Education USA office in Sao Paulo for inviting me. This has been in the works for quite some time. When I visited way back when, in I believe it was March or April of this past year, and we were thinking about some topics that might be of interest to some students in the area. So I'm happy that we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the college admission interview process, and then we'll leave some time for some question and answer as well. But I want to make this engaging. You know, I know obviously with the virtual stuff, there's not as much time for the back and forth, but if you do have questions, please feel free to either raise your hand or put it in the chat or even unmute yourself, and you know, we'll make sure we're getting those questions answered. So this presentation really is going to be focused in on how to ace your college admission interview. And really, we're going to focus on a few things. We're going to focus on right now, kind of talking a little bit about why colleges and universities in the United States offer interviews and the significance and the importance behind the interview. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the types of interviews that are offered. We're going to talk about the do's and don'ts. And then also, I added in a few slides, some helpful hints for you all, that you really can kind of get a sense of the questions that, you know, the admission officers or admission representatives will be asking you. So if you have a notepad at home, or I know this is being recorded, so you refer back to this, but some of these slides hopefully will be helpful for you as you are hopefully registering for some of these interviews at the colleges and universities you are looking for. So now, why do colleges offer interviews, right? So we have students, you know, you're applying on the application, and, you know, what's the common application, the coalition, the school has their own application. But really, the application is great, but the interview really is an opportunity where the institutions can learn more about you as the applicant. You know, there are some things, you are limited in some of the things that you are sharing on your application. So this interview really allows a human element to the application. It adds a personal touch. You're not just, you know, Joe applying to Bentley University. We add that all these different little personal anecdotes about you to the application. And really, we're also assessing the fit for admission. So you're going to hear that terminology a lot within the United States, fit. Really, we're assessing your academic fit, your academic capabilities. We're going to be talking about your social interest as well, but also you want to make sure that the school has what you're offering. So the interview is not only for the university, it's for you, the applicant, as well, because some of the questions that the admission officer might be asking you, or just some of the general questions you might have, if the university doesn't check a lot of those boxes, then maybe it's not the right fit for you. So it's it's a way to offer different aspects. So if you look at it from not just a way for you to talk about yourself, but if you look at it as a way for you to learn more about the institution, then your interview will be more fulfilling as well. And so, and to that second point as well, it's really to gauge your interests. A lot of universities use it to track demonstrated interest. So what that means is we're really seeing how engaged you are with us. And the interview, besides applying early decision, in my opinion, the college admission interview is really the ultimate way for you to show that demonstrated interest in our university. You're not just applying to apply, you really are invested in showcasing yourself to the admission committee. Now, looking at the types of the admission interviews, there's a few options. So some colleges and universities, there will be required interviews. So you cannot gain admission without doing an interview. This is where that research piece comes into play of, when you are looking at some of the schools, you want to look at the requirements, and the schools will be pretty transparent about the types of interviews that they offer. Schools will offer optional interviews. But as I'll mention in the next slide, if it's optional, you should absolutely take advantage of it. Now, in terms of the actual evaluation of the interview, some schools offer non-evaluative interviews. Some are actually evaluating you based on the things that you are sharing. Your academic performance, things that you've done outside the classroom. Maybe there are some things that you are sharing that, whether it's personal issues or whatever it may be, we are evaluating you. And I'm saying we, as the schools that do offer the evaluative interviews, we're evaluating on all these different factors. And then we're sharing that with the larger admission committee based on what you've presented to us. And then some are just informational. At Bentley, we offer the non-evaluative interview. So really we are just learning more about you, and it's also an opportunity for you as the applicant or the interviewer to learn more information about Bentley. And we have this holistic review process where we really want to learn more about you, your interests, your passions, your talents outside of what might be mentioned on the application. Now, going back to point number 2, about if the interviews are optional. If it's an option, you should absolutely do it. Especially if it's at a school that it's one of your top schools, you should absolutely do it. If a school gives you the option to interview, to set up a conversation, why wouldn't you take advantage of that opportunity? Especially if it's a school where you really see yourself being a part of that campus community. It really allows you that opportunity to shine, to share more information about yourself. And again, about some of the points I touched on before, about demonstrating your interest and excitement in attending that school. A lot of admission officers will be taking notes on what you're sharing. And we can see your, through your body language, through the things that you're sharing with us, again, your excitement for the institution, about all these different factors. And it does play a role in the admission decision in some cases. And going back to that about like the informational, sometimes we are just taking notes so that we can share with the rest of the admission committee, because some schools, your application will go through a committee. So your one application will be reviewed by multiple admission officers. So I might have a chance to interview you, but I might write up some notes and share it with my colleagues. So because they obviously weren't in the interview, but they can learn more about you, about what wasn't shared on your application, which I think is a very valuable and helpful tool to take advantage of. Now, any questions so far before I dive into how to ace your interview?
I'm sorry, my internet connection failed on the evaluate. I think part of the type of the interview. Can you go back, please?
On this part or this section right here?
Yes, this one. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So really, I was just talking about the different types of admission interviews that are offered. So between required, the optional, and then between like you selecting as the student that, if it's required, it's part of the application process. If it's optional, it's not required, but highly recommended, we always say. And then when you're actually interviewing, schools will say, we're evaluating you based on what you're saying, or we're not evaluating you. We're really just using it as a way to gather information about you. And then I mentioned that if if it's an option, you should absolutely do it. Optional doesn't mean optional in the college admission world. If the school gives you the option, you should definitely do it. It's really highly encouraged. I would say about 70% of applicants, this is for Bentley, about 70% of applicants that apply do an interview, and it's a really helpful tool for us on the admission committee. Now, in terms of how to ace your interview, so we're going to go through a few steps here to really make sure that you are prepared as possible. So the first one being your etiquette, whether it be in person or virtual. So a lot of schools now, and I think these are one of like the, I don't want to say, I don't want to look at the pandemic in a it's been, there's been obviously a lot of negatives out there, but if you're looking at it from like a positive spin, I think in terms of access and opportunity, a lot of universities are now offering virtual interviews. So if you don't have the means to physically come to the United States for an interview, or if a university is coming to visit in person, but you still don't have the opportunity to visit with them in person, there's virtual interviews. So etiquette can be applied to both the in-person and virtual aspect. So remember, first impressions are everything. You want to make sure that you're attentive. You want to make sure you're locked eyes on the screen. You want to eliminate some of the distractions. Same holds true when you are doing that in person as well. And now, again, dress to impress. Now, I want to go a little bit in depth about this, because some schools might tell you what to wear for your interview in terms of like, do you want to wear a shirt and tie? Do you want to wear a blouse if you're a female, whatever it may be. But some schools leave it up to you as the interviewee. And so for us at Bentley, we want you to feel comfortable. And again, use professional judgment, but also we think the interviews are a way for you to express yourself. So if your expression is, a different type of outfit outside of the traditional, like, shirt, tie, suit, coat, whatever it may be, that is totally fine with us. Again, just some tips, probably not smart if you're interviewing at, say, Bentley, to wear maybe another university, maybe one of our competitors, during the interview process, or if you're interviewing at one of maybe the Ivy League schools and you're wearing another Ivy League school to that interview. Again, just be smart about that as well. Now, if you think of the interviews as a conversation, I don't want to guarantee anything, but I'm confident in saying that things will flow a lot better if you treat it as a conversation. Really, you're sharing things about you. Your interview is an opportunity for you to brag about yourself, for you to talk about all the amazing things that you are doing, all the amazing things that you have accomplished, both inside and outside of the classroom. So if you treat it as a conversation where you're establishing eye contact and you are really just kind of going with what you know and what you're staying within your comfort zone, then things will flow a lot better, at least from my experience interviewing students. Now, it's really important to do your homework. You probably have heard this from David and maybe your school counselors and other advisors that you may have. Research is so important, especially when you are applying to colleges and universities, but also during your interview. Make sure you're doing some homework beforehand. Review the college's website. Look at some of the rankings. The more you know, the better your conversation will be. Yes, the interviews are a way for you to gather information, but if you know a little bit about some of the programs or resources offered, then again, your conversation will flow a lot better. Now, going into the preparation piece here, which I just mentioned on slide 4, after you've researched, start writing a list of questions. Again, don't just write questions that the admission officer wants to hear. This is your process. This is about you. So ask questions that are going to be relevant and important to you. If the class size matters to you, if the access to faculty matters to you, if certain clubs or organizations matter to you, you should ask those questions, especially if it's not mentioned on the website or any of like the print materials that colleges have. Make sure you are asking some of those key questions to the admission officer or whoever may be interviewing you, because colleges and universities, not only will it be a member of like the admissions staff, It could be with, at Bentley, we have our admission fellows. So they're actually juniors and seniors at Bentley. We give them a nice leadership role, and they actually do a lot of our interviews for us, especially when we're out traveling around the world. You might even be interviewing with an alum. So always are being strategic about, some of the questions you might be asking, but also just know that the more prepared you are for the interview, it's just going to help you out in the long run. Now, we talked about, being yourself with your apparel and how you're dressing. The same holds true with how you are presenting yourself in the interview in terms of your authenticity. We want you to be yourself. And again, the goal for us on the admission end is to find students that are themselves and to find that social fit as well. Don't misrepresent who you are, because when you do apply, so say you're interviewing and I'm asking you a question about your academic profile, and if you say, oh, I'm a straight A student and these are all the things that I've done, and then I look at your transcript and maybe you are getting C's and D's, well, you're misrepresenting who you are. So I think being honest and transparent in the interview process, again, it creates that authenticity. And also us as the interviewer, we're really going to be invested in you and what you're saying. So, and we're going to be sharing these notes most likely with the admission committee. So we want to make sure that you're telling us relevant and honest information. Now, explain items that are not fully understood on your application. This, again, students, you've been living through this pandemic and probably taking classes virtually. If there's something that's not documented on your transcript or on your application, things that you might feel like the need to clarify, maybe you were limited with some of the activities that you were able to do outside the classroom, or you really struggled with a specific class because maybe the teacher didn't do a great job of teaching virtually or even in person. Make sure you're mentioning that to the admission officers, so that way there's no surprises when we're seeing your transcript, and that way we actually might see it as a way of like, wow, that's a sign of maturity. They've taken initiative to talk about this specific class, and I see it on their transcript, but they also explain to me, this is why I have this grade, or this is why I had this performance, or I wasn't able to do X, Y, and Z because of what I shared. So just make sure that you are being upfront. And for the most part, admission officers will allow you that space to share some of those things that might not be fully understood in your application. And I know on the common application, I think there's 2 boxes now where you can fill out, like the impact of COVID, but then also like additional items. Well, if you don't want to, you can write in something in the box, but if you feel the need to elaborate on those additional items or things you want to expand upon, then definitely make sure you're mentioning that. All right, any questions so far? Okay, so now let's go into a little bit into how not to ace the interview. So number one, don't memorize your answers. Some colleges and universities will give you a list of questions that they're going to ask you ahead of time. If it feels like you are we can tell when you're memorizing things. Remember, this is about you. So it's important to be authentic within your answers. Yes, it's nice to maybe possibly prepare about some of the things you might be asked, but specifically memorizing certain things, it comes out as not as genuine and authentic. Number 2, this probably should be number 1, but never ask about your chances of being admitted. It does not look good. It's not the appropriate etiquette. And also, you might not be interviewing with the admission officer that's gonna be reading your application. So and also you don't want that note to come across of like, oh, this student only cared about just being admitted. That's all they were focused in on, instead of really just kind of taking the time to really immerse themselves in the entire interview. Number 3, don't assume that the interviewer knows everything about you. So really, again, take time to elaborate on some of your answers. We will ask you a lot of open-ended questions. And if we feel that you are not you're not going in detail, we'll continue to prompt you to be like, oh, do you mind sharing this? And that should be a hint to you of like, oh, I probably should elaborate on this a little bit more. I should talk about, instead of just saying, I won an award for my academic accomplishments. Okay, what about that? What specifically did you receive your award? What did you do to receive that award? Who was involved? What skills were involved? Those are the type of things that we're looking for you really to build upon that versus just giving us one-word answers, because your interview is not going to be, it's not going to be fulfilling. I think that bled right into point number 4. Don't give one-word answers. Again, we really try our best not to give you like those close-ended, like yes, no questions. We're going to ask you a lot of questions, and I'll show you some questions that we're going to ask you, but you really want to make sure that you are elaborating. Again, it's your life. This is your interview. And so you really want to showcase your best self as much as possible. Now, in terms of how not to ace the interview, going on to step 5 here, don't use your cell phone, turn it off. But I will say there is a caveat to that. So if you maybe have prepared some notes or some talking points that you want just to refresh, or maybe your list of questions, you have it on your phone instead of writing it down on paper, I would preface that to the admission officer, whoever is interviewing you. You could say, hey, just want to let you know, I did write a list of questions down on my phone. Is it okay at the appropriate time to look at my phone and ask my questions? If you preface that ahead of time, then we will appreciate that versus you just randomly pulling out your phone, then we're going to think you're not engaged and not interested. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, again, in terms of like the basic obvious questions, I think some of those things go into about, maybe just some questions regarding, what's the weather like or something like that. Really find questions that are going to be fulfilling to you. I mean, maybe weather is important, but you want to ask some thought-provoking questions. You also want to make sure that you're engaged with the admission officer about certain things about the college and or university. So instead of saying, the weather or, what are your school colors? Again, if that's important to you, great. But again, this is your space. This is your time. And sometimes you might only have 30 to 40 minutes with that person that might be reading your application. You want to ask questions that are really going to be fulfilling for you. Try not to be shy. I know, again, not everybody is extroverted. So it really is, and this honestly comes back to the person that's interviewing you as well, in terms of, making sure that you are comfortable in your interview. So if you think of it as a conversation, maybe that will, ease some of the anxiety and stress that you may have for the interview. But, for me, I always try to lead with some fun questions. I'll ask you about, where do you see yourself in 20 years? Or if you had $1 million, what would you do with that money? I might ask you a fun question about if you were, doing karaoke. Or what's your favorite song to sing when you're with your friends? Something that's just going to break you out of your shell a little bit and make you more comfortable. That's not the case for every interviewer, every college or university, but I think some of the interview process falls on the interviewer because we want to make sure that you are opening up and being your true self. And number 8, don't forget the follow-up. It's really important after your interview to either ask for a business card if you're doing it virtually, ask for the interviewer's email address, so that way you can just follow up with a quick note, just thanking them for their time. Try to maybe remember one of the questions that you had asked with the response, like, oh, thank you so much for talking about this activity on campus. It really is helping me make my decision of why Bentley is, one of my top choices, something along those lines. So it just shows that you were attentive and present within that interview. And Jose, I'm going to get to your question. It's coming up in 2 slides. So just hang tight regarding your school experience. Now, I told you I was going to give you a more in-depth view about some of the questions that we might be asking or some of the themes during your admission interview. So I know for us at Bentley, we like to talk about, your interest in, applying, especially as an international student, applying to the United States as a whole. We're going to talk a little bit about, your interest in, we're a business university. So we might ask about, your interest in business in our university. How did you hear about our university? A lot of universities like hearing about how you have found out about them, your connection to the school, why you're here for the interview today. So be prepared to ask those questions. We're going to talk a lot about your character and your skills. And so some of this information might not be easy to identify on your application specifically. Yes, you'll have your letters of recommendation, which are folks that are writing about you and your skill set, but also this is your chance to really talk about, your strengths and weaknesses. How do you thrive, or what areas do you need additional support? Now, we could be talking that from an academic perspective, a social perspective. Are you an introvert, and so your weaknesses may be like breaking out of your shell a little bit, or are your strengths in your leadership capabilities? Are you a natural born leader? Maybe you're not the president of the different clubs, organizations at your school, but maybe you have taken initiative in a different way. So just trying to get your mind thinking about that. Speaking about leadership, can you describe a leadership position you had in and out of the classroom? So that, again, this gives you an open-ended opportunity to talk about some of the leadership that you've done. And we'll ask you some clarifying or follow-up questions to those initial questions. We like to hear about things that you struggled with, whether it was maybe virtual learning or staying connected with your peers during, virtual learning, or it could be something totally outside of maybe academics. Maybe it could be a conflict that you had with a sibling, a parent. We want to hear how you have overcome some of those challenges, because that goes a long way as well. And again, what do you do when you're not in class? We might ask that question at the beginning of the interview, so that way you feel a little bit more at ease. So you're kind of just talking about yourself and your hobbies and your interests. Now, additional questions to help you prepare. I mentioned this a little bit, but we're kind of looking to find out, how you think that our university would be a good fit for you personally. So that's where that research piece, as we talked about in the beginning, comes into play. Have you done your research? Yes, the school checks all the boxes. It has the right location for me. It's the perfect size, the perfect location, everything that I want. Wow, they actually have done their research about the size of our school, this ranking, this program. That goes a long way for us as the interviewer. Be prepared to talk about the kind of college experience are you looking for. Are you looking for more of a, experience where you're going to be, one student in a classroom of 300, or do you want that smaller, intimate classroom setting with, classes are 100% faculty taught, where no classes are going to be bigger than 24 students, where you're going to get that one-on-one learning? Or does that not matter to you? Are you looking for more of like that social aspect, 40, 50,000 college kids on a college campus? So be prepared to talk about that. Knowing your high school performance to date, is it an accurate reflection of your ability and potential? Remember, we talked about being transparent and honest. So it's important to at least know a little bit about some of the class. Be prepared to talk about some of the classes you've taken, maybe your strengths and weaknesses in a particular subject. So Jose, talking about your question. So I would talk about, let's see, high school experience. What are the top details I should focus in on? The more detailed, the better. So from an academic perspective, maybe talk about your favorite subject and why you love that subject. Was it because the teacher? Was it because of a particular topic? Did that topic that was discussed, maybe it's economics, and maybe you took that class, maybe you're in your 10th or 11th grade, and you're like, wow, I never thought that I'd want to pursue a career in economics, but after taking this class, this is something I want to do. And this is why I'm applying to your university, because of this class, kind of tying it all together. So those are just some, high level examples. Now, another question that will be most likely come up is, what is something that won't come up on your application that you want the admission committee to know about? Again, this is very subjective because this is based upon your experience. You could simply say something along the lines of, I want the admission committee to know that, this school is my top choice. I'm a hard worker. I'm a leader. I continue to do X, Y, and Z, and this is why I would be a good fit for your institution. Quick, short, to the point, or maybe it's something a little bit more in depth. Maybe it is like a personal issue that you want to share with the admission committee that they can be aware. And And again, I mentioned this a few moments ago about some of the fun questions, but if you were to receive an award in 20 years, what would it be and why? So it's something that's like unique, that's outside of applying to our institution, but we're seeing those creative juices flowing. We want to get you to get a sense of, maybe, what are your passions and your interests? It could be something, even that doesn't apply to academics as a whole. I want to be an astronaut, or I wanted to be a professional, football player, something along those lines, So thinking about that could be, something that you can say. But again, it all comes down to you. And where you see yourself. And some of these questions really are personal, but it leads to you being able to express yourself freely in a way that is something that's going to be outside of what's on your application, which again, that's why I love doing the interviews, because you really get to see, you get to really learn and see all about the student or the interviewee, if you will. Now, again, I talked about this, about like what not to do, but this is what you should absolutely do. Whether it's a thoughtful handwritten thank you note or an email, it really does go a long way. You also can use this as an opportunity to continue to show your interest in that university. Hey, Joe, thank you for taking the time to interview with me. I really enjoyed learning about X, Y, and Z. Oh, by the way, I created a CV or a resume, and here is attached. Here is this attached for you for additional review in case you have any other questions on my qualifications. Now, not every student has a CV or a resume, but if you wanted to share maybe something additional that maybe you forgot to mention on your interview, or maybe it's another opportunity for you to touch base later on in the admissions cycle. It's always good to stay connected with your interviewer, because it continues to show engagement and that you really are passionate about our institutions. Again, don't stress. As long as you are yourself and prepare ahead of time, your interview will be worry-free. Again, I always tell students, this is your opportunity to brag about yourself. Similar to your resume, make sure you are including all the amazing things that you're doing, both in and outside of the classroom, whether it's academic accomplishments, whether it's even stuff within your family. Yes, I'm the caretaker for my grandparents. So after school, after a long day of school, I go and attend to my grandparents, or I watch my siblings, and then maybe I also, do a part-time job. I don't know, whatever it may be. Make sure that you are true to yourself in the interview, and I promise you that will shine through to the person that's going to be interviewing you. Any questions? I know that was a lot to throw at you, but I wanted to make sure that we're including all the different tips, some of the questions that might be asked during the interview process. I actually have a slide on questions. So feel free to unmute yourself, raise your hand, put in the chat. I can answer them out loud. Happy to do so.
Joe, thank you so much for this presentation. It was very informative. I have a question. How decisive would you say an interview is in the admissions process?
That's a great question. This is where it comes back to institution specific. So schools, for the most part, should be transparent about the type of interviews that they offer. So at Bentley, on our website, we say non-evaluative interviews. We really do use it as a way to just learn more about the applicant, because it ties into how we review applications. Some universities will say it's required, or it's our way to track demonstrated interest, or that they use it in their way to actually evaluate students. So really it's institution specific. So again, we talk about the initial outreach. I think when students are planning to interview, they should ask those questions. They should say, oh, how will this interview be used in my admission status? Will this impact my admission status if I don't interview? Obviously, some will say, well, it's required, so you have to, but some that are optional, I think it's important to say, what are you using this information for? And students should feel comfortable about asking those questions. And even you as a counselor, reaching out to admission officers and say, hey, I see you offer the interviews. How is it used in the admission process. And it's our job to be transparent of how it's used.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions?
Excuse me, can I ask one more question?
Yes, absolutely.
So should I be more personal, more technical to the interviewer? Like, how should I treat him, like, in about the etiquette?
So you should treat, you're saying like in terms of like how you're responding to questions, or maybe just elaborate that on a little bit more if you don't mind.
Like, how should I pull myself? Like, how should I, yeah, like my answer to questions, and how should I, like, the etiquette? How is a proper etiquette to an interviewee to assume?
Well, I think, again, you want to be professional. So you want to seem like you're engaged and interested. I mean, there are some students that maybe if you're sitting in a chair, like you don't want to slouch in your chair. You want to establish eye contact. You want to make sure that you're engaged in the questions. Virtually the same thing. We can tell if you're distracted virtually by looking away, looking down at your phone. Like we can sense all of that. So I think from an etiquette standpoint, like you want to remain engaged. Again, you're taking the time, setting aside, half hour, 45 minutes to an hour to be in that interview. Be present in that interview. Eliminate some of the distractions. And remember, like, this is about you, nobody else. So you're only doing a disservice to yourself if you're not present within that interview. And then just in terms of, you could even ask the universities when you are signing up. Like, for example, I'm coming to Sao Paulo at the end of the month, end of August, and I'm going to be doing interviews. So I'm going to be sending out emails to students and saying, hey, it's me, Joe. I'm coming to Brazil. I'm going to be doing interviews. But if you're visiting a university's campus and doing an interview on campus, you can even ask if it's not mentioned on their website. By the way, who will I be interviewing with? Will it be an alum? Will it be an admission representative, like a counselor, or will it be a student? And I think, you can all, if you know this information ahead of time, you could potentially gear your questions accordingly. If you're interviewing an admission officer, yes, we can answer student life questions, but you might want to ask us more admission specific questions. If you're interviewing with a current Bentley student, well, that might change some of the questions you ask in a positive way. Maybe you want to learn more in depth about a student experience, about what they're doing on campus. Again, the questions want to be fulfilling to you as the person that's taking the time to interview you. Was that helpful, Jose?
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Absolutely.
Joe, another question.
Yes, of course.
In terms of timing, when do interviews take place? After the Common App is open and the application season has begun?
Great question. So again, this is going to be institution specific. So I'll kind of speak high level, then focus on how Bentley does the interviews. So, for the most part, I think the Common Application opened up August 1st. So schools might have, will only offer most likely interviews to students that are going to be seniors or rising seniors or current seniors. Some schools might offer it to juniors, but I know at Bentley specifically, we only offer it to seniors because they're going to be the ones applying. Now, if they're a current junior in like the spring, like the US spring, so like March and April, but they're going to be going into their senior year, we will offer interviews in March, April, May, June, July. We offer interviews from from end of March through November. Really, the only times we're not offering interviews is during when we're reading applications. So pretty much once the application deadlines hit, so like November 15th, until we release decisions on March 15th, we don't offer interviews because we're taking the time to read your application. But for the most part, we're offering interviews throughout that whole time. Summer is a big time in the US when students are maybe taking the time to visit colleges or universities, and you can kind of kill two birds with one stone, come to campus, do a tour, then also interview. But also if you feel like that's too much, you can possibly schedule a virtual interview with our universities. I know Bentley, we do that. Like some students are like, I'm visiting 3 or 4 colleges in one day. Like I just don't have the bandwidth to do that, which is totally okay. We want you to be in the right headspace. So we'll schedule something with you. And for the most part, if the dates don't align with, time zones, or, if you're like, oh man, I have like sports or activities during the times you're offering interviews, still reach out to the office, the admission office, and say, hey, like, this is my situation. Is there any way that we can schedule an interview like outside of this time? I mean, they might say no, but at the end of the day, like, our job is to make sure we're connecting with students. So we also offer the interviews when we're coming physically in person. Like I mentioned, I'm offering interviews when I'm in Brazil at the end of the month. So it's a great way to make a connection, whether it's in person or virtually. So we are Bentley University. We are a business university located in the greater Boston area. So if you know a little bit about Boston, very college focused. We call it America's greatest college town. There's a lot of wonderful colleges and universities here. So if you can see from the map, this is the top of our campus. This is not our whole campus, but you actually can see the Boston skyline from campus, which is great. So we are a residential campus, so it's kind of a home away from home feel for our students, where they feel connected to a campus, but they also have a major US city right there for them, where they can get to and from the city through our transportation system on campus. Now, in terms of just really high level rankings and things like that, we are a mid-sized university. So again, not too big, not too small. We like to say we're just right. So 4,200 undergraduate students. We are internationally focused as well. We have about 15% international students on campus. So this is undergrad. I think total population between undergrad and grad, it's a little over 20%. So for our size, we have one of the largest international populations in the United States. And we draw students from all over the world. So it's not, we like the global flexibility that we have on our campus, or global, in terms of like the global outlook that we have, you know, it's not concentrated in Asia or the Middle East or whatever. We have a lot of students from Central South America. We have a lot of students from the Caribbean. We have a lot of students from, you know, Europe. It really is a nice mix. And we're strategic about that because we really value different cultures and experiences. And so having students from different backgrounds it creates a great learning environment. So a lot of students from Brazil. It's actually one of our leading applicant countries, and then also students that are coming to Bentley. We do have a lot of students, which is wonderful. Now, in terms of the education at Bentley, you know, one of the big hallmarks of the Bentley experience is our academic curriculum. And so we have what's called this core here. So all students, when they're applying to Bentley, are applying as undecided business majors. So you actually have until the end of your sophomore year at Bentley to declare your major. And it allows you for a lot of different flexibility. So within our core courses, you're going to be taking all different types of classes to give you a really nice foundation in business and the arts and sciences. You're going to have those skills that you need to succeed in today's marketplace. We're really going to stress the importance of globalization and the role that ethics, diversity, and change play in today's world. We're also going to be diving deeper into understanding the requirements to operating a successful enterprise. And finally, really tying that all together, we're really going to be looking at the importance of strategic thinking and innovation. So this is going to be part of your core curriculum, where you're going to be taking all those different classes that are going to really give you that nice foundation. From there, it's really your curriculum your way. You can customize you know, your major in multiple different ways. So our business majors, combined with our arts and sciences majors, offer multiple pathways to the academic experience that you want. So the curriculum is set up in a way that allows you to customize your education that matches your passions and your interests, as well as your talents and abilities. So the options really are virtually endless. You can select 2 majors. You can have 2 majors and a minor, 1 major, 2 minors. So a lot of that flexibility. And it allows you to do different combinations. For example, if you're really passionate about finance, you love numbers, you want to do finance, but you also want to pair that with maybe sustainability science. This can position you to be a controller at a renewable energy company. Not only are you getting that finance skill, but now you're also getting some industry background as well within that sustainability realm, which is really crucial. And again, the idea is to help you stand out in a crowd from other students that might be applying for those internships and jobs. Now, You can also, do marketing and public policy, and you can potentially design campaigns for maybe a global nonprofit organizations, or possibly you want to major in our diversity, equity, and inclusion major, and pair that with a history major to create new inclusion practices for a large corporation. It's truly your major, your way. So you really have a lot of that flexibility. And really at Bentley, we are committed to the integration of business and the arts and sciences. So while we are a business institution, you're going to get a lot of that arts and science content as well. Now, just in terms of technology, we are what's called an experiential learning university. So our students learn best by getting hands-on experience. So in the classroom, we cap our classes at 35 students. So you're never going to have a class bigger than 35. Average class size is around 24 to 26. So again, smaller, intimate classroom setting. All of our classes are 100% faculty taught, which is wonderful as well. But we've also invested in technology. So we've invested over $315 million in these high-tech facilities around campus. So we have what's called the LEAF lab, which is our economics, accounting, and finance lab. We have our CIS sandbox. So what do you do in a sandbox? I know it's probably been some time since you played in the sandbox or at the beach. You build things, right? So in our sandbox, students are building different mobile applications and different gadgets. It has that technology component, which is great. And then the one we're most well known for around the US really is our on-campus trading room. So if you're interested in that trading aspect, stocks, investments, then Bentley is the place for you. We have the largest university trading room in the United States. So it's equipped with 24 Bloomberg terminals. Students can trade on the stock market, utilize the analysis tools and databases to make real-time decisions. In fact, students who are members of Bentley's investment group are responsible for investing a portion out of Bentley's own savings. So we call that our endowment. So a handful of years ago, I want to say like 7 or 8 years ago, they were given $250,000 US and have grown it to more than $1.3 million, which is, again, incredibly impressive that these are real dollars that our students are investing in, which is amazing. Now, just in terms, I mentioned this briefly, again, best of both worlds, where we have an on-campus residential feel, but we're close in proximity to the Boston area, as you saw from that image earlier. We have over 100 clubs and organizations for you to be involved in. In terms of like living, 98% of first-year students live on campus, but 86 or 87% of students live on campus all 4 years. So if you want to live at our facilities, you have that ability to do that all 4 years. Or, if you're like, I lived on campus for 2 years, I want to go live in the city, you have that opportunity to do that as well. It's not required for you to live on campus, but part of the US college experience is that residential co-curricular experience, which is great. Now, just in terms of career services, so this is where Bentley truly shines the most. And it's because of just how proactive we are with our students. We're actually ranked #1 in the US for our career development office and the career services that we offer. So really think about career services as a lifetime skill, whether it's learning how to do an interview, a mock interview with an employer, or doing an interview, presenting yourself to an employer, or building on a resume, or just learning the different skills that you need to attain a job after graduation. So that's what our career development office does. We actually bring the employees, these companies and organizations to you. So on campus in the fall and the spring, we invite over 150 companies and organizations to campus just for our Bentley students. And you have the opportunity to go and network with them, talk about the different internships they offer, talk about the different jobs. And we really push all of our students to go and have those great experiences. I know in Brazil, I believe you call it a job shadow, but in the US, we call it internships. In the US, at Bentley specifically, we push our students to have more than one internship experience. So getting real life practical experience in the job market, whether it's and it could be any industry that you are looking into, Bentley has those connections. And each year, we work with over 30,000 different types of companies and organizations throughout the year that are engaging and want Bentley students. So having Bentley on like your diploma or resume, it's going to go a long way. Even going back to Brazil. We have a great alumni network in Brazil that we like to connect our students with as they're looking to maybe do some internships or jobs after graduation. And just real quickly, in terms of the admission overview, I'll skip over this, I'll go to the slide here. We're a common application school, 2 to 3 letters of recommendation we require. We're looking to receive your senior grades as well in addition to your transcript. We are test optional for the SAT or ACT. So if you're applying this year, totally up to you, it's optional. The one thing that we do require, if English is not your first spoken language, then we do require you to sit an English proficiency exam, or a test rather. So we accept a wide range of different English proficiency exams, ranging from the TOEFL Essentials, the IELTS exam. The Duolingo is really popular as well. That's more cost effective and a quicker exam. So all that's on our website, on our first year applicant page. You can see the list of different exams, plus the required scores that we are looking for. Now that is Bentley in a nutshell. This is my contact information, but again, I'm going to open up to some Q&A. I want to I've been talking for a while and I don't want folks to check out. So I want to leave it up to you all to ask some questions that you may have.
Guys, so please take this opportunity to bring Joe questions about Bentley University and interviews. It's an amazing opportunity that Bentley is offering to you.
Excuse me, I've sent a question on the chat.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
I'm reading it right now. So I guess I'm confused about your question about like that they're based on. So we look at it from like I guess for economics, we look at it both like a macro and so like let me go back to our majors. So we're looking at their major specific. So the content of the course really does vary by the professor. So if you want to just do business economics, it covers topics on that. We have economics, finance, we have quantitative economics, which is more math focused. So if you're really keen on like mathematics, that's a popular option. And then philosophy, again, it kind of covers the key principles of philosophy. So I'm not sure if that answered your question fully, Jose.
I think that's fine. Like it depends on the teacher.
Yes, it really depends on the teacher. But I will say, at your leisure, you can go to any university's website and you can actually go into like the course catalog or course descriptions. And if you wanted to, you can take a look at some of the majors you're looking at, plus the courses. So if you click on the actual course, it gives you a description of what you'll be learning in that classroom.
Oh, that's nice. Can I just ask one more question about exchanges?
Yes.
So are there any exchange programs to Europe and like Nordic countries? I'm very interested in the culture of these countries. So it would be amazing to like experience both US and those,
Yes, so we do. So I didn't include a slide on that, but we do have what's called our International Education Office. So you can we call it study abroad in the U.S. So you have the opportunity you can start at Bentley, but if you wanted to go to say the London School of Economics for a semester or for a full year, we have a partnership with them. Or if you want to go to a school in Italy, you want to go to a school in Singapore, wherever it may be, schools will have certain partnerships. So at Bentley, we partner with over 80 programs spread out through over 25 different countries. So if the country has like a specific program you're looking for, then you'll apply to that country. So typically, most students will study abroad their sophomore or junior year. It is a bit of a process, but you can go away for a full year, a full semester, or you could even go away, do like a semester at sea where I think that's, students usually do that for like Europe. They take a boat actually, and they actually travel along like around Europe. They stop at different ports, different learning in different areas. So a lot of different options that universities offer in the US for that experience. I will say for Bentley, in the United States, about 10% of students at most universities, about 10% of students choose to study abroad, meaning they start at the institution, they go away to another school abroad for a semester or a year, whatever it may be. At Bentley, more than 50% of our students choose to study abroad while they're there, because we really do pride ourselves on that global education and really valuing, emphasizing the importance of globalization and learning from different cultures and backgrounds.
Thank you. That's really cool.
Joe, I have another
Yes.
question. You mentioned being available for interviews while you were here in Sao Paulo. It's going to be still August, right? End of August.
Yes. Yep. I will be coming down at the end of August. So I will be the last week in August into that first few days into September. I'll be in Sao Paulo. So if you have students that you think might be a good fit, please reach out to me as soon as possible. I haven't scheduled any yet. I haven't sent out my big email yet, but if you want to get on your radar, or if you want me to come to your school, if you think that that would be an opportunity where I can visit.
I was about to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can sit and I can do like a block of interviews after school hours. I'd be more than happy to do that. And I honestly think that would be really, really beneficial for my time as well, because I can meet with more students and I can be there for them versus them having to travel to me.
Fabulous. Okay, I'm gonna look into that.
Okay, great.
That'd be great.
So I just thank you, Joe, for being here with us and to bring our network and to all the participants here, either live or watching the recorded session, this important information, not only about interviews, but also about your institution, Bentley University. And so thank you very much for your time.
Thank you all, David. Thank you, audience. Thank you all so much for your engaging questions and for this amazing opportunity. As mentioned, I will be in Sao Paulo. So here's my email address. If you want to connect with me in person, please feel free to reach out. Be happy to set up a time to have a conversation, or for the counselors in the audience, visit your school if that's what we have to do. I would gladly and welcome the opportunity to do so.